Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the escalating and, honestly, pretty terrifying biological consequences of skipping sleep. We so often treat sleep deprivation like it's some sort of badge of honor, right? Just a temporary inconvenience we can push through with another giant cup of coffee. But the science, yeah, it tells a vastly different story. We're going to explore exactly what happens to your brain and your body when you just stop sleeping, mapping out a literal descent from everyday run-of-the-mill tiredness all the way down to acute psychosis.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever nodded off for just a few seconds without even realizing it? We've all been there. Maybe you're staring at a dense textbook at 2 in the morning, or driving down a super empty, monotonous highway, and suddenly, bam, your head jerks up. You realize you literally just lost a moment of time. Well, that tiny, seemingly harmless lapse in attention, that's actually your brain sounding a massive neurological alarm. It's the absolute first warning sign that your systems are starting to fail.
Which brings us to Section 1, the threat of microsleep.
So a microsleep is a brief, completely uncontrollable sleep episode lasting 15 seconds or less. And the crazy part is, you might not even realize it happened. But during a microsleep, you literally lose conscious control of your performance. You just become totally unresponsive to the outside world. This is exactly why folks with shift work sleep disorder, like night shift workers on their morning commute, are nearly 3 times as likely to crash their cars. Think about it. When you're behind the wheel, a 3-second microsleep is literally all it takes to drift right into oncoming traffic.
Now, what's truly mind-blowing is what is actually going on inside your head during these episodes. A fully awake brain processes audio and visual stuff totally normally, but fMRI scans show us that a microsleeping brain acts, well, really weirdly. A lot of the brain areas that normally shut down during actual sleep actually stay activated, even the wakefulness centers. Yet, despite being awake, the brain just stops processing external stimuli properly. Like, it actually stops being able to tell the difference between sounds of different pitches. It's like your brain is powered on, but someone went and unplugged all the input cables.
Moving on to Section 2, the sleep deprivation timeline.
Let's track how this whole thing builds. We're taking a literal journey here from everyday tiredness straight into a severe psychological breakdown. We can look at this in roughly 12 to 24-hour increments, and as you'll see, the symptoms don't just add up, they multiply and compound at a really alarming rate.
Okay, at the 24-hour mark, you've officially missed one full night of sleep. You might feel like you can still function, sure, but the CDC states that staying awake for just 24 hours impairs your brain as much as a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10%. To put that into perspective, that is completely over the legal driving limit of 0.08. So your alertness, your attention span, your executive functions, they are already severely compromised. Then, as we hit the 36 to 48-hour marks, things start getting much darker. You experience this overwhelming urge to sleep, which scientists call sleep pressure. Alongside extreme fatigue and suddenly wanting to eat everything in sight, you start suffering from psychological effects. We're talking depersonalization, severe anxiety, and temporal disorientation, basically losing your sense of time. Plus, those involuntary microsleeps we talked about, they become highly frequent and incredibly dangerous because your brain is just aggressively trying to force you into a sleep state. Let's dig deeper in Section 3, inside the sleepy brain. So, you're probably wondering what exactly is happening chemically inside your head to force you to shut down so violently. To answer that, we can look at a brilliant study published in PNAS. Researchers took healthy male adults and put them through a grueling 52 hours of continuous sleep deprivation. By using specialized PET scans, they were able to peer directly into their brain chemistry to see exactly what was driving this intense, unavoidable urge to sleep. What they focused on is a neurochemical called adenosine. Here's how it works. As you stay awake, adenosine naturally builds up in your brain, and it binds to specific receptors, namely the A1 adenosine receptors. This binding process is the exact thing that creates that immense heavy sleep pressure, dictating your biological need for rest. Simply put, the longer you stay awake, the more adenosine floods your system, and the more your brain actually upregulates these receptors to try and catch it all. And the data here reveals a really striking picture. The researchers found that 52 hours of sleep deprivation spiked the brain's A1 adenosine receptor availability by a massive 11 to 14% across different regions of the brain, like the insula and the striatum, compared to a well-rested state. What this proved is that individuals with a huge increase in these receptors suffer much worse performance impairments. Your brain chemistry is quite literally altering itself just to force you to go to sleep.
This leads us to Section 4, hallucinations and extreme deprivation.
So, what happens when you try to fight off that biology?
Well, by the 72 and 96-hour marks, your brain simply snaps under all that chemical weight.
The urge to sleep becomes entirely uncontrollable. Your perception of reality distorts so severely that it actually resembles acute psychosis. I mean, you can experience complex hallucinations, literally seeing, hearing, and feeling things that absolutely are not there. You suffer from delusions, completely disordered thinking. You essentially lose the ability to decipher reality because the neurological hardware required to process it has just been completely overwhelmed.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, reversing the damage.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty grim, but the good news is we can reverse this terrifying chemical buildup and restore sanity to the brain. That said, the data shows that recovering from sleep debt takes serious time. As a rule of thumb, 1 day of total sleep loss requires more than 2 full days of recovery sleep to fix. In that PNS study we just looked at, researchers found that 14 hours of continuous recovery sleep successfully restored the brain's A1 adenosine receptors back to baseline levels. But really think about that for a second. A single all-nighter demands a heavy, multi-day toll on your sleep schedule just to wash away that chemical buildup.
To protect your brain from these escalating consequences, you absolutely have to actively prevent the buildup of sleep debt. If you only missed a few hours, prioritize short naps. If your deprivation is caused by a medical condition like sleep apnea, utilizing targeted therapies like a CPAP machine is a total game changer. And for everyday prevention, you've got to establish strict sleep hygiene. Keep consistent bedtimes, cool down your bedroom, and strictly ditch the electronics at least 30 minutes before you want to sleep, just to give your brain a chance to naturally wind down. Look, we live in a culture that loves to praise people who burn the midnight oil. But the next time you consider sacrificing your sleep for a few extra hours of productivity, or staying up way too late just to binge a show, I want you to picture that chemical pressure building up inside your brain. Picture your brain literally rewiring its receptors, pushing you toward dangerous microsleeps, impaired judgment, and eventually a total break from reality. So ask yourself, is that all-nighter really worth the cost?